Hi, I'm Janet Khoshaba with Rewind, and this is Back Up to Level Up podcast, hosted live from Las Vegas at ShopTalk 2026. We're here on the floor talking to founders and operators about their stories and how they've had an impact, and we really want to bring those stories to life and share with you how they've backed up to level up. We're live at ShopTalk 2026 in Vegas, and I'm here with Jonathan Arena from New Generation. Jonathan, can you please explain yourself, introduce yourself, and explain what New Generation is?
Yeah, sure. My name's Jonathan. I'm one of the co-founders of New Generation, and we're building generative storefronts for retailers. So what is a generative storefront? Imagine you're going shopping and you're a customer, and you have a use case that you know the search bar is probably not going to be able to answer. Well, we can now solve that problem for a retailer. And we do that by fielding any kind of customer question and generating an on-demand response from that brand right for the customer in real time.
Oh, wow.
So that takes the form right now of a generated web page.
Correct.
So I'll give you a practical example. I have a 6-year-old daughter. I have to plan her birthday party. Say I'm on a party planning website or a party supply website or something like that. I could say, hey, I have a 6-year-old, there's 20 people coming over to my house and I want it to be a unicorn-themed birthday party. Mm-hmm. Probably that retailer doesn't have that page built, right? Well, this is what this generative storefront does. It can now render that page right for the customer.
Wow.
Takes about 2 seconds, and now they have the ability to capture that customer intent all the way through checkout.
That's amazing. So it's like personalized, on-demand landing pages.
On-demand web experiences. Another way to think about it is an AI-assisted shopper journey, perfectly tailored for a shopper's intent, at scale for every customer.
That's insane. Great.
We definitely think it's the future of a brand-owned web experience.
Absolutely, Jonathan. What's one thing that you love about working at New Generation?
I think, well, it's probably about being a founder and in the domain that we're building in. So if you can have a clear vision of the future, mm-hmm. The nice thing about running a business is you can just do that. And then you convince a bunch of other people who are excited about that idea. They join the team. And so you can really lean into your intuition in
Absolutely.
A way that it's probably very difficult to do in a larger company.
That's so exciting. So let's back up a little now. Can you touch on what really inspired you to start your business? How did you go from like an idea to the first product service to your first order?
Yeah, okay. It's a winding story, but I'll try to compress it. There's a couple moments in time that I could talk about. One certainly is, so I'm a designer by training. I spent my career in product design, building software and interfaces, sometimes for consumers and sometimes for retail brands. And as the AI wave started picking up steam, I think one of the things I realized pretty immediately was interfaces and the way we make them are going to dramatically change.
For sure.
Interfaces are basically code's a language, mm-hmm. LLMs are trained on language, right? Mm-hmm. And so I started writing a book, actually. That's how I got started. I was exploring the future of interfaces, and midway through excavating the thoughts and ideas for that book, I basically convinced myself that I needed to just build that stuff. Rather than just write about it.
And educate, exactly, right? Wow.
I couldn't resist the opportunity because the process of building websites and interfaces has not changed meaningfully in decades.
That's true. That's true.
And then I met my co-founder, Adam. Adam's background, worked at Stripe, and so he has commerce experience, checkout, data infrastructure, he's technical. So we had a really good overlap between those two abilities and experiences, and that overlap is very squarely commerce experiences online. So commerce interfaces.
For sure.
Websites.
Yeah.
So that's how we got started. You asked me a follow-up question there.
And now the turning point. So let's change gears a little bit here. What changed that helped you go from trying to actually growing? So was there a specific moment? I know you mentioned your book, or decision or a channel that actually made a difference or an impact?
I think there's probably two distinct things that happened that changed the trajectory of us starting the business. The first was we participated in a startup community called South Park Comments. South Park Commons has a community in San Francisco, one in New York, and now one in India. And it is literally a community of builders, makers, some designers. They need more designers, but they have some. They call it go from the -1 to 0. And that is, ideas are fragile and precious when they're early. And what you really need is time and space to explore and focus and pivot around to gather enough momentum and conviction to say, I have an insight here. Mm-hmm. And so South Park was pivotal in those early days for us, giving us the space and the community of resources to help us get to the next level. And I think the second thing that happened was we got our first early pilot customer. We were building this generative website technology, and we showed it, and when we demoed it pretty much every day for many weeks. And there's nothing like getting a potential customer deeply excited about what you're doing. So much so that they're like desperate to give you feedback. Mm-hmm. And so feedback from customers early, of course, should bend the arc of any company.
True.
And so both of those things happened in close succession for us, and I think that's really how we got liftoff in the beginning.
Yeah, there's nothing like validation, right? And hearing the words that, hey, I like this product, I love it.
Well, you want both, right? You want people telling you and affirming that your vision is right, but you also want people to not believe it. I'm a big believer in that, because if everybody says yes, if everybody says what you're doing is incredible, it's probably too easy. There's probably not a real startup there. You want to have some kind of vision that is far enough or radical enough in the future that there are skeptics. I think that's like an important thing that we learned.
Yeah, it helps you think outside the box, right? So you can really venture off that way. That's awesome.
Right.
That's great. So now let's talk about the level up moment here for you, Jonathan. We want to hear something to inspire our audience who either are trying to get into the business similar to yours and take something away from what you've learned in your journey. So if there's one lesson you'd give someone starting today, what would it be?
So I think there's obviously a new suite of tools available to pretty much anyone who wants to build software and technology, right? I'm pretty sure that if I were starting again, and this would be applicable to somebody who's looking to start a business, mm-hmm. or they have an idea and they really want to get started on that idea, you can now build a prototype at 1/10 or 1/100th of the cost. And the same is true for the amount of time. You can compress that entire cycle. And so doing these iterative prototyping loops, getting customer feedback, it's way less challenging to go through that early phase now than it was even a year ago. So get out of the excuse mindset is my advice. Like, there's nothing more powerful than leaning into your conviction and intuition, prototyping that thing, and getting really fast feedback on it from potential customers. I think the only other thing I would add would be user experience. Of course, I'm a designer, mm-hmm. but I think it's applicable to anybody. User experience is now a competitive edge.
Absolutely.
It always was, but I think it's so much more obvious and salient today because the cost of building software and engineering is compressing to zero. So now the question is more about what to build than can you build it? And so the faster you can get through to a strong answer there about this is the right thing to build, and leaning into a high quality customer experience, you're going to be ahead.
That's awesome. So would you say polishing up on your AI skills?
Definitely experiment and don't be afraid to try new tools.
Right.
You don't want to lean in too much and be too dogmatic about one tool. We're all in this learning environment now where you need to be very elastic. But I would say having technical partners is still a huge asset. Mm-hmm. I want to be clear that just because we can vibe code something quickly doesn't mean that to build a durable business and real infrastructure, you don't need technical talent.
Totally, absolutely. You can't take the human out of the loop, right?
Not yet.
And just to lean into that, can you share something you did earlier on that, looking back now, feels kind of insane. So I know you touched on a few things about, you know, how AI has shortened the gap for all that, you know, for coding and all that kind of stuff. Is there anything that you've done that was so monotonous and manual in the past that you're looking back and like kind of feels insane? It's like, wow, I can just do that with a click of a button.
Yeah. So all of the one thing where we're doing right now that, in contrast to how I was doing it before, is building context on the customer that we're trying to sell to.
Mm-hmm.
We are really putting that into tools and putting that into data storage to provide context to all the tools we work with, whether it's a coding agent
Mm-hmm.
or some kind of new marketing workflow. Before, that was really like hand-spun Excel spreadsheets, tracking to-dos, trying to continually like reach for context and say, oh, like what did I say to this customer? Now, like our entire go-to-market workflow is recorded,
Automated.
all of it's logged.
Yep.
There's a lot of automation there. So to me, that's like pretty mind-blowing. In just a year, I'm saving so much time. I want to offer a counterpoint though,
Okay.
which may surprise a lot of people. I think a very high leverage and still very manual process I use is building slides. I have
Totally.
built in the past 18 months probably over 1,000 presentations.
Oh, wow.
And I use Figma. Maybe not the most traditional tool for slide building, but it offers me incredible control. And I still think we get feedback that our presentations are exceptional. Probably because we're spending a lot of time still investing in human attention
Mm-hmm.
to that and really customizing the story for every single customer we talk to. I still think that's worth it. And that has not been replaced by a single button click.
No doubt. Totally agree with you on that. Made several presentations myself, but they still haven't perfected that yet, right?
Yeah.
For sure. All right. Before we close, where can people connect with you and your brand, and what's coming next for New Generation? Super exciting, awesome technology. I'm really excited about what you guys are doing.
Thank you.
So yeah, how can people find you, your brand, and what's next for your business?
Find me on LinkedIn, Jonathan Arena /Jonathan Arena. We're working on some pretty cool partnerships. So we're going to be speaking at Stripe Sessions in April, at the end of April, announcing some new product releases that are going to be really exciting. And we're working on something really big with a partner I can't name yet, but it is related to allowing agents to check out on merchant websites.
That's so great.
And we've all been imagining what agentic checkout is really going to be like,
Mm-hmm.
but there are almost no examples of agents going across the open web and landing on a merchant's website and being able to complete a transaction. Right now, we've seen examples maybe inside ChatGPT or closed environments, but we're really trying to work on that capability for merchants to accept any agent checking out over the open web. So it's really exciting.
Wow, that's great. So inspiring too. Well, Jonathan, thank you so much for being on Back Up to Level Up podcast. It was so inspiring to hear your story. The audience definitely is going to learn a lot from you. I have myself. So yeah, thank you so much for being here. It's a pleasure having you, and look forward to seeing what's next for New Generation.
Thank you so much. I appreciate the great questions.
Yeah, absolutely.
Pleasure.
Thank you.